There we go. So, as you heard at the end of the last episode, Travis is gonna rant.
Oh, don't make anything off. It's weird how Donkey Kong 64 has become so politicized.
Everything's political these days. Can't we just enjoy video games without lesbians, without gays?
Here's my counter to that argument. Why can't we enjoy video games with lesbians and gays?
That's what I'm saying.
Or, I mean, oh my god. This is a stupid argument, but video games are, I think, goes without saying, video games are more diverse than they've ever been. And if it offends you to look at something like that, then just play a different game. I don't understand brigading against that kind of stuff. Just play Mario. If you want to avoid, which is stupid, if you want to just like close your eyes and put blinders on, then whatever, then just play Mario. It's so easy. If you really want to just completely not think about anything, they make it easier.
If you want to not think about anything, there are many other mediums you can go to.
And there's the whole CW network.
Watch Legends of Tomorrow. No, what?
Oh, what I was gonna say before is this. I don't know how to open this. Another thing I've learned is I am part more young adult / I guess we're not. How old do you get to be when you stop saying young adult? When do you get to stop being a young adult? It's 25, isn't it?
I think 25, because 25. I don't know about you, but this past year, when I've turned 25, it's like I am feeling more... Like, my mind just feels clearer.
I don't know. I guess I feel... I don't know how to
maybe not clearer.
That's a weird way to describe it. I know what you mean.
But, like, I just feel like I'm able to... I'm able to negotiate, like, emotions and critical thinking in ways that I haven't been able to
that's
before.
A good way to put it. I think my mind is less clear. There's so much stimuli going on,
but it's like less what's going, the processes of your brain are rapid fire, but I'm also able to focus a little more on specific things at a time and like think about things more critically.
What I was going to say earlier,
so 25
this kind of ties in with muting your brain, and I used to be a pretty big part of this game, maybe when I was like 18 to 22, is I hate like centricism. And this is a big thing with like the Joe Rogan crowd, which again I can't criticize too much because I listen to that all the time too. But just like there's good people on both sides, or it's like, yeah, they're being really uncomfortable and rude, but that's their opinion. And it's like, I think, I don't know, maybe it's you hit a certain age, but life is too short to be like there's two sides. It's like, what do you believe in? Stand for that, or prioritize your beliefs versus like there's. I think it's such a non-factor to be like, oh, it's all, everybody's got their opinions. You know?
I think part of it then is that allows people who are already powerful to maintain it, because if there's good people on both sides, quote unquote, then it really is that the status quo isn't all that bad, and why are you complaining? Because there's good people on both sides.
Because you know what, the status quo is never good. We're never done.
Yeah, well, see, and that's the real. If you want to talk about spilling the tea, I think that's the real thing. Is that people, the path forward, the ideal society is never going to happen.
No.
And like the path forward is, and I think this is where I'm kind of seeing my role and how I kind of want to see society change, is that and I've heard other people, especially like people who are black, who are activists, talk about this, is that in our lifetime things are probably never going to be equitable, like truly equitable, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be fighting to make things more equitable.
No, and it shouldn't ever be. I don't think there should ever be an agreed consensus of things are okay, because I think in society, and this comes to society, this can come to video games, this can conclude anything, is you should never be afraid to ask for more. If somebody's telling you, like, things are good, everything's right, this is the best, they're not, I don't know, it's a bad...
They don't have your best interests at...
There's always something more you can, and I don't mean that in a gluttonous sense, I mean, like, things can always be better.
Yeah.
Oh, I already hit the switch, okay.
And I think any time... And this is what happens when people say like there's good people on both sides, is that just stands to reinforce the status quo, which we don't like. but it's just another way of saying that things don't need to change.
And things can go 1 step forward, 3 steps back, 5 steps forward. But the point is, you should always be asking for progression. There should always be a goal or an idea that's like, okay, or people say stuff like, oh, well, they got it so much worse in Venezuela, and it's like, we're not in. I'm allowed to say that things could be better,
and also it's our fault that things are bad in Venezuela.
It's like we're allowed to say that, hey, I think that you should be making more changes, or I think that this should be this, and that should be encouraged. That should be like a consensus. I'm not saying you specifically get A or B. I'm saying, if you're sitting there and you're like, yeah, things are good right now, I don't know, you're probably not thinking enough about what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
There's always somebody that doesn't have what they need, or even like stuff like movies or video games, there's always things that can be improved upon.
Working conditions would be my number one thing. I saw somebody had posted, I think I shared this on my Instagram, but somebody posted on Twitter and said, games don't need realistic graphics. Games need their work. Game companies need to pay their workers and not
That's the big thing with Last of Us 2. It's like, oh, it's photorealistic. And it's like you hear about these people and they're like, oh, we had to study real life violence and we had to work 16 hours. And it's like, okay, well, you could have made the graphics a little bit less realistic and not had people be like that. And I don't think anybody would have complained.
Or I would say another way, if you wanted to talk about the effects of violence, you could have people talk with people who have PTSD, or you approach it in a different way. Everybody knows what blood splatter looks like.
If or you even and it's not just violence. You could tie any uncomfortable theme or idea. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing about movies and video games is they aren't real. And yes, you should talk and research with people that have gone through these things, but there's no reason why you have to purposely spend day and night studying to an unnecessary, I don't know,
or force your workers to.
Realism, or it all comes down to realism, and it's messages aren't always told best when they're most realistic too.
Yeah. And that was something I was kind of discussing with some friends from college, is that it was an article that was about Last of Us 2 and how it's this term called ludonarrative dissonance.
Yep, and it's the same thing with every Uncharted game. No, ludonarrative dissonance is a good term.
It's good, but the way people use it, it's...
The idea is the message of the game is violence and killing is bad, but you spend the entire game performing violence and killing people. Yep. So what you do goes against the message of the game. And I think that's something that a lot of games ignore, and I think that hurts the game.
I think so, too. But I would say, for game design, that's a good idea. But I'm saying for game critique, it's only useful if there's a specific reason behind why you're So if we're talking about ludonarrative dissonance, if we're talking about Last of Us 2 showing a bunch of violence and then saying violence is bad,
I think that hurts the experience.
It needs to be put into the context of the game, especially when you hear about the working conditions and the violence occurring in the workplace. Well, that then adds a whole nother level to it.
I've played the Uncharted games, and in the fourth one, there's so many times where it's just oh my god, I can't believe you killed somebody. And it's in the last level, I just murdered 400 people, and it takes me out of it. I think that's a completely valid complaint for the game.
Totally.
And it shows that the creators, despite believing in a message, they either are unwilling or not creative enough to find a way to have the gameplay tie into that. A really good game, the gameplay ties in with the message.
I would say so too, yeah. Or
if you decide that you're playing a game because if you can't do that, then don't have a lofty narrative and message to your game. Focus on the gameplay.
Yeah, or I would say, and it's very similar to other mediums too, how you construct or make or film or direct a movie is also important to understanding the message behind it too, because if you're and also if you're
practices Tarantino and you're making a movie and you have jokes and critiques about fetishization of actresses, and then you have all these very questionable shots, I think that's something that could use improvement.
Yes, that's exactly what I mean. And then also working conditions too,
That's
and that
that's
kind
why
of
I don't
stuff.
like. That's why I like kind of don't want to work on movies because the working conditions are horrible. Same with games. Like you have to be a really passionate person to like I want to work on a game or movie because the whole philosophy behind it then is once you're in, it's like, oh well, you're lucky to be here. This is your
Yep.
dream.
Yep.
So you have to work horrible hours for horrible pay.
Yep.
Everyone's mean to you,
Yep.
and it's like, well, okay.
And it's so. I mean, like we have stated here very publicly that IGN is not an ideal place.
They got some
but
stuff going
but
on right
it
now.
just it's the with games. But then you also see this with journalism in general, because games journalism is at kind of this weird mishmash. But you also see it with movie journalism and that kind of stuff too. Is
It's
that
most prominent?
it's
in
most
games
prominent in games journalism is that you have the negligent working conditions and all that stuff with journalism, then it's crossed with the horrible working conditions of games, which then makes it even worse. So that's how you get these guys and these editors in chief who are just complete assholes who get to exert their power over people, and it's just ugh. So many things wrong with.
Are you gonna play The Last of Us 2?
No, I'm not going to. I
I'm
already
not
know
going
about
to
it because
either.
my boyfriend's playing it, and I'm seeing parts of it. And all
Yeah,
that
I
stuff,
feel like
too.
I could read a Wikipedia synopsis and kind of like. I guess you could call me a bad game critiquer, but I'm not gonna take offense to to that. But it's like oh, I get it. I don't know. I liked the first game. It was interesting, but I am very disconnected with. This just happened when I was playing Red Dead Redemption 2. Just like the emphasis on realism and really good graphics and doing that. And the fact is, it's not fun to play. Okay, fine. If it's not that fun to play, the story better be really, really good. And here's the thing: The Last of Us story, it's like a good episode of The Walking Dead, which I wouldn't even watch that show. It's like,
See, it's funny to me that when Last of Us came out, people were all
they're like, this is it, this change, and it's like this is like a 7 out of 10 movie.
and I was like, they're like, it features a relationship with two people where where it's like a little complicated.
Did I not get the funky monkey punch? I guess not.
And to me, it's just like there are plenty of other AAA games that are
No, don't
non
even
AAA games that are.
If you
that
want
are
a
doing
good
things
story,
interesting.
play in. I can't think of a AAA game that I'm like that's a really good story. I really like the Metal Gear Solid games, but that's a me thing. Like that's
Like-
something that appeals to me.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not necessarily that the story is good, but you like what's going on.
I
with
like
it.
it fits the specific things that I like to see with characters and story. But still, if it was a movie, I'd be like, oh, this isn't a very good movie.
And it doesn't have to be a movie. And
No, and it shouldn't be a movie.
And that's why I think
no, but
you
the
see
thing
a
is,
lot
like,
more a lot better storytelling in independent games or mid-level games because there's not this urge or this push from the developers or from people who are
Publisher.
selling these things to make things realistic. The idea is to use the medium to tell a story
You hit
that
the nail,
can't necessarily be told in as effective of a way as would be in a game.
And that's the thing. That's the problem with things like The Last of Us and Metal Gear Solid is they are trying so desperately to be movies. And the best storytelling in games is when they take advantage of the medium and aren't trying to be a Hollywood. Here's the other thing. You don't need to try and be a Hollywood movie because here's the thing. Hollywood movies kind of suck too. It's like, oh my god, every movie I see in theaters I end up like hating. Basically, the only good movies I see are like the really limited release ones, or they're like digital release or something like that. Every time I go to the theaters, I'm like, I can't believe I spent 3 hours on Aladdin or. And again, maybe I'm being snobbish. Call me snob. I don't care.
And the same thing happened with movies where you have people who are trying to make, and you still see this obsession with games too, where it's like, are games literary? Are movies literary? And it's like, it doesn't have, it's not a book and it's never going to be a book. So stop trying to make it like a book and stop trying to say that games their ideal storytelling should be like a book or should be like a movie. The ideal storytelling should be using the medium to the fullest extent.
And I think there's a lot of weight placed on that sentiment too. Of it's like, oh,
And
it's
I
not
was
literary.
And I was an English teacher, so I can say that.
It's like it's not literary, but it's like I also think, which this sounds like something that a really stupid person would say, but I don't think I don't think that like being a book makes the
Good.
thing better or smart
No,
either. There's a
not
lot
at
of like
all. Not at all.
there's this really, and I bring this guy up a lot, but he just makes me laugh so much. There's some really crappy Ben Shapiro interviews where he's like, why don't you guys open a book? People think that rap music is poetry. Why don't you put in some Bach or some this and that? And he's like, I can't believe people do this when they can just read them. And it's like, what do you mean? Oh my god!
It's
it's
that's white supremacy.
That is racism. But like, okay, bear with me here. Even if you ignore the racism, I think it's really stupid. Because why can't rap music be poetry? Why does there have to be that divide?
Or why can't rap music just be rap music?
It is like modern poetry.
Yeah.
Like it literally is. But why does it have to be, or why does it matter?
Well, the reason why is because rap developed explicitly like to respond to race. Like black people who were able to read and like stringing together words, not stringing together. Black people that were able to create like complex wordplay and that kind of stuff was something that was not like black people were not given that opportunity for hundreds of years in America. So it makes sense that rap would become the art form.
And it makes sense that it would be different too, because why would poetry now be like sonnets, and like why would it be exactly the same as it was 400 years ago? Like
I had this discussion, a kind of similar discussion with my dad the other day, because we were talking about people complaining about how black names are different, and it's like why can't they just be named like Mary or something?
Brian.
And we were and we were talking about people who were complaining about that and why it was stupid. And I was like, if you were enslaved by somebody, you wouldn't name your kids after them.
Why do you care what people's names are?
I know,
too?
it's just again, it's the thing where it's like people rather, kind of going back to last episode where we were talking about understanding somebody else. It's like, why don't you just take 5 minutes and think like, maybe the people that we enslaved don't want to name their kids after us.
Oh, and
and like that's not something that's reflecting on like them having something negative about them. It's reflecting on how white people are terrible.
If you get mad about that, it's like, well, now who's the snowflake? Oh my god, you're sensitive as heck.
Ooh, I love the snowflake thing because again, it's just like everything, the buzzwords that those conservative people, I can't even call them conservative because they're just something else entirely.
Angry people.
But it's just like the phrases that they use, it's just like they're talking about themselves. If somebody calls you a snowflake, they're engaging in the same exact behavior.
They're probably really sensitive.
Yeah.
I really hate this. Not that it's bad, but I really hate the whole like listening to classical music makes you
I hate
smart.
it too.
And it's like, oh, you were flipping through the radio, or it's like, oh, you can play Ode to Joy on piano. You're not like classical music was pop music a million years ago. Like, yep. I don't know. Like, here's no... And it's like, it's the same thing. It's like, rap music isn't real music, or like comic books or graphic novels aren't... It's like, why does it matter? It doesn't matter. But the only reason it does matter is because then it allows you to feel superior to other people. Whether that be intellectually or racially or whatever. Take this. Somebody who played piano for 12 years, was in band for a long time. Classical music, it's fine. It's great. It's whatever. It's also some of the most derivative and repetitive music you're ever going to find. Like, people complain about how, like, music is derivative and repetitive now. People were doing sonata format for, like, 100 years, and it was the same exact format, and pop music, where it's, like, chorus, bridge, or... No, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. That's based off the sonata, which had like a very similar musical setup too, where it was like theme, transition, new kind of weird theme, transition back to the original theme, and then a closer. This all comes back to what we're talking about with objectivity too, because at the end of the day, it doesn't. The people who argue X is the good thing, they already lost when they do that.
Yeah.
It's not about what's good. It's about what makes you feel a certain way. What inspires thought and feeling and introspectiveness inside of you. And if that's X, Y, or Z, That's beautiful. I'm glad
Yeah.
that's important to you, and you should be supportive of the things like that of the people around you.
Correct. And you should, when people make the argument of this is good or this is bad inherently as a genre or whatever, because there can be terrible rap songs. They're just like poorly
there's
made.
so many.
There's so many of them.
But you can't say it's a bad genre.
Yeah, exactly. But by labeling a genre, then that is a justification on another person's end.
It's got such a scale. I think some of the best songs and some of the worst songs are rap right now.
Oh, totally. Just like I love some pop songs, and some pop songs are just terrible, just garbage. You know.
Do I have the springy skunk? I think I do. I gotta get a change, bro. Oh, there's some bananas up there too.
But yeah, it's just a way for people to feel superior.
And I do think that for probably about 10 years of my life, that was me.
Oh, me too. And there's still some. I still sometimes have tendencies.
Yeah, I still
to
do it, but I catch myself now.
Yep.
That's the difference.
Yep.
I go, okay, wow, you did something kind of rude there. Maybe we'll not do that next time. Whereas before, I'd be like,
Well,
I'm the guy.
Yeah.
I don't even know. And it's so silly to think about that. Like, I used to hold things that I enjoyed to such a high standard because it's like what? I don't even know where I'm going. I'm looking at my DVD collection right now from when I was a teenager, and it's like, oh, Travis, you got all 3 American Pie movies. You're the guy.
You have Hamlet too.
You own the entire series of the Ali G show. You sure are one smart cookie. I had a lot of trouble with this one when I was a kid. I remember this. It gets really fast. Watermelon.
But yeah, I was listening to the radio today, and on NPR they were talking about K-pop fans.
Listen to that too.
And it's really interesting to me. And when I came into my to my master's, I wasn't thinking that any of my research would focus on fan things at all. But then you hear more about fan, like I'm not a huge K-pop person, but then you hear about things they do and things they organize with, and then it's like really interesting and really exciting. And even though I don't like BTS, maybe I can still appreciate and understand how people are using that as a way to connect and, you know.
If anything, you should be like, oh, well, there's a couple different choices you can have. Somebody's like, oh, I'm really passionate and interested in this, and it means a lot to me. You can go, oh, that's cool. Maybe I could get something out of this too, and check it out. Or you can go, you know what? I'm happy for you, but that doesn't sound like the thing for me. Or you can be like, ugh. Those are your 3 choices.
I can do all 3 simultaneously, so speak for yourself. But it's just I think the thing I learned the most kind of in my master's is that people who that criticism of somebody's taste is inherently part of a way to maintain your power over somebody else.
Do you think your opinion? What time are we at?
23.
Do you think your opinion of higher academia has changed after getting your master's?
Oh,
or
completely.
Even just getting your degree?
I'm already making enemies in the new English department.
I feel so differently about college after being done it. I don't think if I again, I can't just reset my circumstances, but I don't know if I don't know if I hold the same value in college that I did before.
I think no matter what you get into, the more you get into it, the more you realize how terrible everything is.
Yeah.
No matter what you do, with video games, with movies, with academia, with any job you ever had, the longer you work there, the more messed up you realize everything is.
Unless you're really passionate about it.
Yeah. But I like education. I like working with people.
I like education.
I want to make things better, so that's why I'm like
If only college was that simple, though, because it's
exactly,
it's a business. That's the problem.
So I can't control how the university system makes its money, right? We were talking about before about like controlling the things we can or whatever. But because I'm chair for this conference, I am gonna make it focused on like our conference theme this year is about resisting. We're calling it. It's always like a one-word theme, and this year we're using the word catalyst.
It's a big word.
It is, but the goal of it is like the subheading I'm going to put on it is called resisting grand narratives of what is it? Resisting grand narratives of progress and change. So the whole point of the conference that I'm making right now is that we want to interrogate and kind of criticize how academia itself we often view ourselves as like progressive people who change the world, but are we really doing that? Is that something that we can do? So I am inviting speakers. Like I'm inviting a speaker. Her name is Rachel Cargill, who like has very publicly who does like academic work, but she very publicly like left American University and Washington D.C. as a PhD student because she was like, this place is super racist and I can't do it anymore. So like she has a view on things that is different from what you would typically get in a conference. I'm also inviting an activist group of high school students from Milwaukee to like give a workshop about racism in education, because it's like that's something that they're well versed in. But when it comes to a conference, we wouldn't think of high school students having knowledge that, you know, professors don't have.
Yeah.
We would think like professors have more knowledge than high school students, but this is something that an activist group in Milwaukee, which is the most segregated city in America.
Okay, this might be hard. I remember this is not
No,
really good. This is one of the ones that on the Wii U version, the upped frame rate, I remember made it almost impossible. Okay.
But anyway, so a big thing then is like I can't control what the university is doing for funding and that kind of stuff, but I can control who I'm inviting to this conference, and I already have one professor in the English department who's pissed at me because we're bringing in people who aren't professors, and I was like, well, here's all the reasons why I'm doing it, and he said, sounds great, but just so you know, funding's going to be down this year.
Oh, that's a very passive-aggressive comment.
Yeah, so it's like I'm coming in guns blazing, and I'm not going to let the institution of old white guys in my English department phase me from doing what I want and like I am not perfect. I'm not saying that what I'm doing is like amazing and is going to change everything, but it's like I have power within this one sphere to enact something that I want to see change, so I'm going to do that.
Yeah, it's not exactly the same sentiment, but I've just learned through, I think higher education, college can be kind of predatory.
Oh, completely.
And like take advantage. And that's something I've become real disassociated with. Because I kind of like, I feel like, oh, like there's this narrative that's kind of set up when you're younger that it's like smart and successful people go to college. If you don't go to college, you can't get a job. If you don't do this and that, you can't do that. And I think that's just another like establishment thing that's like it's totally only that way because people continue to tell you it has to be that way.
It's a classist thing, because colleges and universities were always meant for rich people, and now that you have colleges and universities that are available for people who aren't rich, quote unquote, they should be available, but in actuality, it's still under this classist idea.
This Corona stuff is so shady too. The fact that people are not only a lot of campuses are charging full tuition. Some are even charging extra tuition when the entire semester is online only.
Yeah.
How can they justify that? Because I guarantee you the teachers are getting paid less. I guarantee you the professors, who are probably, most of them are probably part-time. I'd say a lot of professors are probably part-time, right?
Oh, yeah.
I guarantee you they're not getting any benefits and they're not seeing any more pay.
Nah,
to have a semester's worth of Zoom, I think it costs like $200. Where is that money going? Well, it's recouping the losses. Well, what is the loss? Oh, you find out your school's got a prince or a dean that makes 7 or 8 figures, and then there's 9 vice deans that make 7 or 8 figures. And it's that's where it's going. I got
and then your state is not funding them, so they're relying on funds from housing and
that's
and so we live in Wisconsin. Wisconsin is explicitly written in the bylaws of the university system that funds that the university gets from housing and food cannot be used on paying professors for academic things. And guess what? What a surprise it was. And now they don't have enough money to pay the professors because people weren't staying on campus.
And I guarantee that because they overcharge for that housing too.
Yeah.
Not only do they overcharge, they do that nonsense where it's like, oh, you need to live on campus for 1 or 2 years so we know you're accustomed.
Yep.
And it's like, I feel bad for UW Milwaukee students because you could get an apartment. You could pay like $150 a month rent for an apartment in Milwaukee, and then they'll make you pay like $600 or $700 for an on-campus thing that's worse.
This year they're letting people live off campus for
Good.
freshmen. which I think should be the standard. Because there are some people who can afford to live on campus and who would rather live on campus. And it's like, if you want to pay that, go for it. But we should give the option to people.
The meal plans to rip off.
We should give options to people who do not have money to live off campus and live in areas where they can get maybe low income housing or that kind of thing. Anyway, me as something else that I'm doing this time around, this summer, I've been thinking about becoming a tutor and like doing SAT and ACT prep or whatever. I never did it though.
SAT and ACT are gonna go out the door though. I swear.
Oh, trust me, it's garbage. But there's a group that started online, and it's run by high school and college students, and they have like they're a full like community. It's like legit and everything, but they offer free test prep, and that includes like AP stuff, that includes SAT, ACT, that also includes like getting personal narratives ready for college admission stuff or whatever. And so I'm like, I would rather volunteer my time to work with students who don't have money to pay for test prep, and I would rather work with them to do that than go to a company where I get paid $12 an hour, but the student has to pay like $500 for this company to like for all these higher ups to get bonuses and whatever.
It creates its own business too, because what if you don't? Well, you have to take it if you want to get into college. But did you know that I don't know if this is just because of COVID or if this is going to stick, but for this next incoming semester, California schools no longer need ACT or SAT score, and I think that's the start. They're going to take out that thing. You got GPA, you got letters of recommendation, you got personal statements, you got SAT. That's enough. You don't need this.
See, and when I become a tutor, and they're like, what are you skilled in? Like, what are all these areas you can do, whatever. So I said like, I can help out with, writing like personal statements, SAT, ACT, English stuff, and then also AP Lit and Comp, AP Lang and Comp, whatever. But the first thing I would tell students, like when they come to me, and I know I wouldn't be able to say this if I worked for a larger program, is like the ACT and the SAT and all these stuff, they do not test intelligence. They test how well you can take a test.
I can prove that myself. Because I took my first ACT and I think I got a 25. And then I took it again, I think like a month later. No studying, nothing changed, and I got a 29.
Yeah. And so...
that's what I did, yeah.
So the knowledge that's actually tested is, can you understand the patterns of the types of questions they're asking? So...
And how well do you do under pressure in like these very standardized and like sterile environments?
Yep, and... Of course, those are usually overwhelmingly staffed as white people, which then is another thing.
Do you have a TI-84 silver edition?
So for me, it's like the goal of that I would want to have as a tutor is helping people understand that like this is not a reflection of your intelligence; it's your reflection of you being able to play the game. But so you got to be able to game the system.
I know they make you, and I'd say that's my number one recommendation. If you're ever sweating about that, take the test twice and just say the first one's a practice. Which a lot of people might not be able to afford, or they might not have time. But if you have that option, you will get a better score your second time with no extra effort.
Yeah. We should probably go, because it's 33 minutes.
We've been talking about academia for a while.
We've been ranting and ranting.
Let me just see if I got enough bananas to get in. I got 2 more guys. We'll see where we're at. I don't think I'm going to have enough. I'll have to get more, and then we'll get back.
And then we'll go. It's just lots of BS going on. I told my students to, when I was a high school teacher, students in Wisconsin are required to take the ACT now.
I thought it was always that way.
No, because now you have to take it in school. So like you can't take it outside of school now. You have to take it in school. Yeah, you can do it another time like outside of school, but you have to take it in school. And I told my students, I'm like, those of you who aren't going to college, just get through this day and just do it. Figure out, like, finish what you need to. Don't worry yourselves over the test. Just get it done. And then wash your hands of it and leave the next day, or just leave it at the door.
There's the moral: wash your hands. Okay, we'll be back.